It's time to officially kick off New York Jets New England Patriots week by going behind enemy lines to figure out what the hell is going on. And we're going to do that right now here on Boy Green Daily. Let's roll. Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans. Field Yates, baby. Field Gaston Yates. Let's bring him on the show. Come on, people. Connor Rogers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor Gaston Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas. Good friggin' morning, everybody. My name is Paul Eston Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to Boy Green Daily, a daily New York Jets video show live every single day at 7:30. That's what the daily portion of the name means. You're welcome. All right, we're streaming live in 3 different places. Heavy on Jets Facebook page, 37,000 Jet fans. Thanks for joining us. YouTube.com/BoyGreen25, and of course on Twitter as well, at BoyGreen25 as well. Let's bring in our special guest for the first time on this program, a budding superstar on the Patriots side of things, Patriots beat reporter and analyst for Patriots CLNS, Taylor gosh darn Giles, baby. What's up, Taylor?
Paul, dude, that intro was legit. That might have been the coolest one I've ever seen. You are too kind. Your intros clearly live up to the hype. I'm honored to be on, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, man, it's been great. I tell people all the time that my favorite portion of this exam going through the season is networking and introducing and connecting with new people. I've got a few Patriots people that I've done a lot of great work with coming up later this week, but I always like making new friendships. That's what it's all about. And that's what I read on the front of that Cheerios box. So I'm trying to embrace it as much as I can, Taylor. Thanks for taking the time. This is going to be great. I appreciate you.
Absolutely, brother.
So let me ask you this, because I'm a guy that thinks it matters, but maybe it doesn't. The Patriots, to put it quite bluntly, have been kicking the Jets keister 14 in a row. Now, that's a lot, but let's go even further. 22 of the last 24. Yes, that's a real stat. And if you even want to go a step further than that, the Jets, the New York Jets, have not beaten the Patriots within 60 minutes of play since the year 2011. How is that even a real statistic? That was the last time the Jets were in the playoffs, which was the 2010 season, 2011 year. Does that matter that the Patriots have been smacking around the Jets in 2023? Because a lot of these players like Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner and some of these have no idea what any of those streaks mean because they weren't here. They were like 10 years old, for Pete's sake, when some of these things were happening.
I mean, historically, the Bill Belichick answer is it's a new season. It's all fresh. I'm going to be totally honest with you. If Aaron Rodgers, were still healthy, I would think, absolutely none of that matters at all. It's just the quarterback situation that worries me. The defense is legit. A lot of respect for that unit, as I'm sure anybody who's going up against the Jets defense does. They've been great for a long time. Feels like every year the defense is not the reason that this team is doing poorly. It's usually injury to the offensive line, quarterback. You got some star wide receiver who's got a lot of potential, but unfortunately, the supporting cast around him can't get it done. But yeah, history doesn't really matter other than maybe confidence on the Patriots side. I assume that the Jets are a professional football team. I'm sure they have all the confidence in the world, got a good coaching staff as well. Hopefully, out of respect for them, they can figure something out. But, it's hard to think that there's going to be a whole lot of difference just considering like the offense hasn't shown it can do it with Zach Wilson up to this point.
Yeah, that's very fair and blunt. And by the way, the fans agree with you. We got our poll of the day. It is linked down wherever you guys are watching, so feel free to vote. The question was, as I just mentioned, the Patriots' recent dominance. Does it matter against the Jets? Yes, ghosts and demons, because that's what I've had for my entire life covering this team. Or, that's the past. And right now, 62% of the votes are on the ghost demons train. And toot toot, we're all aboard that train. Speaking of trains, I want to ask you something, Taylor, because here's the thing. So the Patriots are 0-2, and that's bizarre. So that hasn't happened since 2001. 0-3 hasn't happened since the year 2000, the beginning of the century, if we want to put it in different terminology, perhaps. And here's the thing. So I've watched the 2 Patriot games, okay? And I'm like, wow, they were like almost there. They were like in the conversation, but it feels like a different theme because the Patriots, the 6-time world champions and all this stuff, they're not normally in the moral cookie business of like the little engine that could. We were right there against the Eagles at the end. We were right there against the Dolphins. I'm like, Patriots, what the hell's going on here? Most Patriots people would be saying, we're 0-2. What the hell? It doesn't matter that we were in the vicinity. So I'm feeling a little in the Patriot fan base, some moral cookies happening here. Hey, we were right there against some good teams. What about getting the dubs, Taylor?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's spot on. And this is a fan base that's pretty sick of moral victories because you had them. And to be totally honest, I feel like there has to be some perspective added to this because you go back to Mac's rookie year. You had a rookie quarterback. I don't think anybody was expecting him to like really contend in the playoffs. And they make the wild card, and then the defense can't stop Josh Allen for a single drive, puts the offense in an impossible position, again, with a rookie quarterback. Next year, that's where Belichick probably, I think, is the biggest poo-poo on his resume post-Brady, where you put one of your friends or 2 of your friends in positions that they're not really qualified for. And as, some Patriots players, seems like I put it behind the scenes, kind of screwed them. So it really felt like any wins you were getting the past 2 years are really just, you had to be thankful. This season, you've got a competent coaching staff. Bill O'Brien, obviously, you can already see his fingerprints all over this offense and their ability to, they're putting drives together, all of that. Mac Jones looking better than he has in his entire career. Hasn't been perfect. Last week, he had I thought it was just a bad decision against the Dolphins, throwing a fade to Devonte Parker with Xavier Howard in coverage when you're right outside of the red zone. They needed points. Again, it hasn't been perfect. But then again, after that interception, the guy locked in. He's making throws off platform, making plays outside of structure that you don't usually attribute to a guy who's really a pocket passer. But at the same time, the slow starts, the turnovers, penalties in bad situations, just kicking themselves when they're already down, just keeps putting this team in bad positions. Now, the optimist in me says these are still good teams they're facing. It's 2 weeks into the season. There's Mike Gesicki said in the locker room, whole lot of football has to be played. They can turn it around, and there's not a lot of organizations you would trust more to emphasize, hey, this is the time that we really got to get it together. Our backs are against the wall. But you also understand where Pats fans are coming from, where, all right, I'm sick of this, yeah, we lost, but the losing has to stop because now you have no excuses on the coaching staff. Mac Jones, again, is looking better than he has. The defense is looking fantastic for the most part. But the offensive line really been in bad shape. Trent Brown missed last game. Right tackle was already a question mark, but now with other guys not really playing up to standards, it's making it even worse. So there are things that need to improve. You're hoping the offensive line does get better, but then even the receiving core not really living up to expectation. Hoping Demario Douglas can make more of an impact. He was benched last week after a fumble. Just a rookie, but probably the most explosive player on offense. So, yeah, they really need to turn it around, and this week is the week to do it because it felt like there's an increased sense of urgency even for a week 3 game. But they got to put the product on the field because they're getting close, but they're not finishing.
Fair enough. The interesting thing is what you said. So we talked about last year, that weird Joe Judge, Matt Patricia thing, whatever that was. But here's the thing. When it happened, a lot of us went, what the hell? Immediately. Whoa, what's going on there? But then at the end of the day, we went, well, it's Bill Belichick. I'm sure he knows more what he's doing than whatever the hell I'm doing. Does that still exist? That last comment I just made, that he being Bill Belichick gets a benefit of the doubt on every decision because, well, he's won 6 Super Bowls with the Patriots and more with the Giants and everywhere else in his career. Like, does he continue to get that benefit of that with decisions no matter what?
I wouldn't say so. I think there's a healthy level of respect, but I also think that fans with every passing year since Brady left have been more and more critical because, again, the product on the field hasn't really been up to par. You expect the Patriots to make the playoffs, and if they make the playoffs, to be competitors in the playoffs. Like I said, with Mac Jones, his first season, that wasn't the case. They get blown out in the wild card round. They don't even make the playoffs last season, even though you're knocking on the door. Like you think about the Raiders game. If they don't throw that one away and manage to pull it off in overtime, if they don't allow 2 return touchdowns against the Bills in the last week of the season, there's a chance they're in the playoffs again. But at the same time, they're not there. It doesn't matter what you could have done. It matters what you actually did. So I think that, people still understand this is Bill Belichick. But at the same time, because the results haven't been what people expect, I think he has lost some of the benefit of the doubt among Patriots Nation.
All right. If you had to compare the offense that we've seen thus far from Bill O'Brien, welcome back, Bill, to New England. Welcome back, Billy. Appreciate you. To the offense from last year with Matt Patricia, Joe Judge. If you had to go, here's this, plop. Here's this, plop. What's the differences so far through 2 weeks of the season in your mind?
The players have really been putting it best where they say everything has a purpose. So, for example, the first week of the season, they come out in 7 different personnel groupings. Usually a team will throw out like 2 or 3, maybe 4. They came out with 7. A lot of different formations. You can put different players in different formations. So all these things build on top of each other. And you can see there's certain package plays where they'll show the same look but do different things out of it, or they'll build something else based on something you've seen earlier. So there's a lot of that, whereas last year there was no cohesion. Like you kept seeing things that looked interesting, but they didn't ever build. There was nothing where you're like, oh, I see a rhyme to the reason. It was really just a cluster of, like, the best example was, you remember the play last year against the 49ers where George Kittle pretends to fall down and catches a screen over the middle after like the double pump? Yeah, the Patriots tried that. I think it was against the Raiders, but they had done nothing to set it up and it didn't work. And it was just like, wait, is that the play that Shanahan ran, but like completely not your scheme at all? Didn't make any sense. Things like that. So with Bill O'Brien, you really do see there's a structure. He does a much better job of putting players in position to succeed, which, that gets thrown around a ton in football. It's basically just not asking a guy who, like a Juju Smith-Schuster, you're not asking him to line up outside and beat somebody deep. You're putting these guys in situations where their skill sets match what they're being asked to do. That said, there hasn't been a lot of great execution, especially down the field. The biggest thing that comes to mind is Kendrick Bourne. He's 1 for 7 on deep balls thrown his way. He's shown a lot of flashes of potential to do that throughout his career. Like, he's made some truly insane catches over the first 2 years as a Patriot. It just hasn't been consistent. And this year, we're not really seeing him rise to the occasion. Although, you would think the way he's being used would make sense given those flashes. But, again, execution's not really there. But in terms of the scheme, you're definitely seeing a lot of steps forward and things just making sense.
Yeah, that was, I believe, the 49ers Seattle game last year. Beautiful concept. It was, I just, sometimes when Shanahan just coughs, I'm like, oh, look at that. So it's funny when teams try to go, yeah, move over, Shanahan. Let me show you how it's done. That sometimes can be kind of funny. Let me go through a couple more offensive pieces with you. The Patriots getting after Zeke. Now, Zeke, not considering money, seemed like a perfect fit for the New England Patriots based on everything he can bring to the table and how he would mesh with everything. Like in my brain, I saw it, but I didn't know if the money was ever going to equate. And then you pair him with Ramondre Stevenson. How has that 1-2 punch kind of developed?
So the first week we saw a lot of them being used together in that like pony package. So it's 2 running backs, but instead of a running halfback and a fullback, it's 2 halfbacks. It wasn't anything too crazy in terms of what we saw. It was a lot of college where you fake the handoff one way, another guy runs a bubble, or it's a screen, stuff like that. Nothing really groundbreaking. I thought Zeke had a few good runs the first week. Last week he didn't, but also the blocking wasn't really doing him a lot of favors. Obviously, no one expected him to be prime Zeke. He doesn't really, he's not jumping off the screen or anything like that, but I think he's been solid. Ramondre has been doing as much as he can with what he's been given. Like last week, it felt like I looked at the numbers and he's really good before contact, but there isn't a lot after that. Then you look at the film, but a lot of the yards before contact are yards that he's making. He's pressing the hole. He's finding cutbacks. He's manipulating linebackers. So I think Ramondre is what you would expect. But as I mentioned earlier, the offensive line has just been in shambles, a ton of injuries, guys being asked to step up we had 2 rookies starting at both guard spots in week 1. So not an ideal situation, a lot of issues. Jets defensive line, I think both these defensive lines on both teams might have a pretty productive day. But yeah, it hasn't been anything too groundbreaking in terms of their production or what you've seen on the field, again, because the offensive line hasn't really been able to help them out much.
Yeah, I tweeted this out. I was joking, but the more I think about it, I'm not joking. Trent Brown got a nice little, raise this week, and I said, "Well, good thing you got that in before the Jets game. That is good H&Ds on his part with that." So Trent Brown, good for you, pal. We'll get there in a second. Who the hell is wide receiver 1 for the New England Patriots? Who is WR digit 1?
Devonte Parker. So if you ask the Patriots,
Wow,
they say that anybody could be the number one. If you're looking at who's the big play threat, who's the guy that they put in isolated situations, it's Devonte Parker. I feel he was doing great over the summer. Again, the pick against Xavier Howard, I think he gets 90% of the league. He turns 50-50 balls into 80-20s. But against a guy like X, who's big, physical, this is not a very good matchup where you're like, oh, just throw the ball up and he's going to moss this guy. Xavier's not that guy where you want to test him that way. Again, why I thought it was a poor decision. But for the most part, Devonte Parker's going to win outside. He's not going to create a ton of separation necessarily, but he's got enough speed to legitimately threaten you deep and get behind the defense. Or if you just want to throw it up and give him a chance to be the guy who's right on his hip, he'll be able to do that. We haven't seen anybody else really show that potential. Last week, he was really more used underneath and intermediate. He was still fairly effective there. But Kendrick Bourne, you were hoping as I mentioned, you were hoping he'd be able to take off, be maybe a high volume target for them because he's good after the catch. He's been good downfield. Hasn't been able to produce the way that you expected. He had 2 touchdowns in the opener where you saw flashes, but couldn't make a catch on 3rd and 12 when the offense really needed a play, and they ended up not converting on a 4th down after that. And then last week, he had, I think, 3 or 4 deep passes thrown his way, and none were caught. So I think it's pretty firmly Devonte Parker is the guy that you rely on in a lot of those big situations. But in terms of a guy that Mac relies on consistently in terms of like a chain mover, I would say that's more Hunter Henry because he's made some wild catches over the past couple weeks, especially the first week. There were some where he kind of bailed Mac out for some not totally accurate throws. So big play threat, wide receiver 1, Devonte Parker. But in terms of the most consistent, especially over the middle, I would give it to Hunter Henry, kind of an offense that's more greater than the sum of its parts.
All right, I was going to go to the defense side of the ball, but how can I wait this long without Bill Belichick? You know, when you go to a baseball game back in the day and you get that little Cracker Jack box, you're like, oh, I think there's someone on the bottom of this. And you go elbow deep in there, you kind of roll around and pull something out. When I saw on Sunday Night Football, I count sometimes the old football player in me. I was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. And I'm like, where's 11? Yeah. It's like a horror movie. Like, whoa, I didn't see that guy coming. And I just, when I saw it happen, I'm like, what the hell is, no way. And then boop, got the block. And it's this huge momentum shift. Again, Patriots don't end up cashing in on that. But like, it was this momentum shifting thing that I'm going to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen that in my life. What was the explanation, if anything, from Bill Belichick following that on that play? Because they used it a couple more times in the game too. So that was an interesting concept there.
Yeah, so obviously they don't give away too many trade secrets. But looking back, I noticed that before that, they did show it on the Jets' first field goal. It was a pretty close one, just kind of a chip shot. But you saw Miles Bryant and Brendan Schooler start outside before coming in, but it wasn't quite as tricky. I'm not sure necessarily if they were just trying to show it, see how how the Dolphins responded. But Cam Acord, their special teams coach, actually mentioned that it was similar to something they did last year against the Colts, where they blocked a punt, and Jonathan Jones started out as a gunner, then crept inside late, inserting into the rush, and was able to block that up. So they did show a bit of a similar type of strategy last season, but this was just perfectly called, perfectly timed, and great execution from Brendan Schooler.
All right, let's jump over to the defense side of the ball. Bill Belichick is a defensive guy, and the Jets just got finished with the Dallas Cowboys. I was there in person. Good Lord have mercy. That was there was a lot going on there. So I get that, like, Matt Judon isn't Micah Parsons, but Matt Judon, speaking of ghosts and demons, has done a few of that in some of these Jets matchups. So what does this defense look like through 2 weeks of the season? How good is this unit?
It's a really, really good unit. We saw that in the week 1 against the Eagles. Explosive offense. They can do a lot. To be fair, I thought that the Eagles, especially in their RPO game, maybe held back. You really didn't see any after the first quarter. I think they ran 1 in the 3rd, and that was it. And they actually did a pretty good job putting defenders in conflict. We'll see if maybe the Jets kind of dust that off a little bit. But for the most part, like one-on-one matchups, they've been really good. They've only allowed 1 deep completion through 2 weeks, which against the Eagles and the Dolphins, no small feat. You saw them. The Dolphins are just so great at creating space and giving their fast guys opportunities to run after the catch. I thought that for the most part, they did a pretty good job keeping a lid on those guys. The Dolphins did score a touchdown on a pretty good adjustment to Tyreek Hill, where they basically had Ingold, I believe it was, or Durham Smythe and Hill. And then they used a particular shift that ended up getting Duggar on Tyreek Hill for a touchdown. Just great scheming. You don't want the Dolphins in the low red zone. That's one of the reasons why. The run defense was pretty good in week 1. Again, on RPOs where they were put in a conflict, you saw them give up a little bit of push. But for the most part, they were fine. But against the Dolphins, you saw they put so much into stopping the pass. There were a couple of times where it contributed to them giving up big runs. But there were also just some fundamental lapses where they gave up the big touchdown to Raheem Mostert in the middle, where you saw their nose tackle get moved out of the fit. Then a lineman got to Juwan Bentley. Kyle Duggar takes a bad angle, and you give up a 43-yard touchdown when you really desperately need a stop. They managed to still make enough plays to give the offense a chance to tie. But again, one of those situations where if you're an elite defense, you don't give up 40-yard touchdown runs. So those were blemishes. They have not been perfect, but for the most part, considering their offense isn't really giving them a lot of help, and they face two of the best offenses in the NFL, I would say it's pretty fair to call this one of the best defenses in the league, and one that should be giving Zach Wilson a lot of trouble, especially with Christian Gonzalez. I don't want to say locking up necessarily, because A.J. Brown and Devonte Smith both had pretty good reps against him. Smith kind of turned him around on one route, and then Devonte Smith forced him to take a bad angle for a conversion. Nothing too crazy. But Gonzalez has had some smothering reps where the ball gets thrown his way, especially downfield, and he's all over these top-tier guys. So I'm hoping we get to see him against Garrett Wilson. I feel like that could be a really fun matchup.
Yeah, I must have missed it in the bio as I was looking here, Mr. Taylor Kyle's #1 fan in the Gonzalez fan club here for you. I've been seeing you break it down some of the tape. You are a proponent of Mr. Gonzalez through 2 weeks of the season. You know, he slipped in the draft a little further than some people would have expected, and New England kind of swipes him up, and you're buying it. You're drinking the Kool-Aid.
He's given me every reason to, man. Like, the plays that he's given up haven't been so bad where you're like, oh, man, rookie mistakes. It's like, no, corners get beat sometimes against good players, but there's never any panic in his game. Like, you never really see him get frenetic, or, if a guy's behind, sometimes they get grabby, or you can just see with their body language that they're a little freaked out. And you never see that with him, man. He stays in phase. He makes plays. You saw last week he had his first career interception where it looked like Tua was looking him off when he was playing the deep half. He's all the way in the middle of the field, effortlessly turns around, locates the ball, high points it for an interception. Not a great ball from Tua, but still a play where you're looking and saying, this is a guy in his second NFL game, looks smooth, who looks like he's on top of things, and is going out there and making plays. Like the defensive rookie of the year hype, he's living up to it.
Okay, spicy. Okay, a couple more here before we get you out of here, Taylor. And you mentioned it, that, again, the Jets, we as fans and media had an Aaron Rodgers funeral and, saying our words. And I think I saw a few New England people across the street not really shedding a lot of tears for that and saying, oh, Zach Wilson, hey, for week 3. So how is the defense looking? Because, we'll probably address this in a more main video later this week, but Zach Wilson has some demons. There's no other way to put it. He has 22 career picks, 7 of them against the New England Patriots. He's been sacked 12 times in those games. The completion percentage is 51%. I mean, the numbers are disgusting. And so they have this again at home with all the streaks and records and things we talked about. That seems to feed more into it, because how could that not possibly be in Zach Wilson's head after all of these games against New England Patriots? I imagine they're licking their chops.
I mean, to be fair to Zach Wilson, Devin McCourty is not on the team anymore. And Devin McCourty, I think he had
God.
Did he have 6 of the interceptions against Zach Wilson? Like he's got quite a few. Yeah. But actually, one of my little predictions for this week was that Marte Mapu, 3rd round rookie, he is someone that didn't get a lot of. He's from Sacramento State, so didn't get a lot of hype coming out of the draft. The Patriots had him in for a visit, and I'm like, all right, my due diligence, let me get a look at this guy. Man, I saw some clips of him at the Senior Bowl, and he's only about 220 pounds. He's more of a defensive back build, but they use him at linebacker, and he was putting his shoulders into offensive linemen, like really making an impact against the run. And then when you look at his college highlights, it's just, he's at a lower level, so you're not expecting necessarily a high level of play, but you see the intelligence, the amount of plays that he was making, where it's not that he's freelancing, like he's actually just making really smart decisions and calculated risks. He's been a Swiss Army knife for the Patriots, especially the Jets. They love their base personnel, where they use 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, kind of see if they can get you in a mismatch. And Marte Mapu has been their Swiss Army knife, where he's listed as a linebacker. I call him a safety because linebackers don't play the deep middle. So if you consider him a safety, he's been their Swiss Army knife in their nickel packages where they use that third safety. They use him as a linebacker. They use him deep. They kind of have him in the slot, really all over the place. And I think he's someone who could maybe pick up the interception streak from Devin McCourty just because he's got great range. He plays all over. And I've seen, again, like Zach Wilson, not seeing underneath zone defenders. A lot of this are just underneath defenders in general and a lot of ill-advised passes. And with Marte Mapu's intelligence and his ability to cover ground, I feel like we might see 2 rookie interceptions for Patriots defenders in a row. We'll see.
Well, Taylor, I really appreciate you being this kind of guy that you're wishing Devin McCourty well out the door, and you're like, all right, who are we crowning next on the show? I'm Taylor Giles. And apparently you've already found that guy, so thank you, I guess, for finding that next man. I'm not sure the Jets are so curious to find that so quickly. You know, they wanted to, hey, I want to work on myself. Not really sure I want to find that next person immediately, but I'm glad you were able to do that. That's beautiful, beautiful, Taylor. But before we get out of here, this will be the final one. Injuries, of course, are going to be coming in both today. Obviously, later in the day, we're recording live here at 7:30, so we'll hear from Sal a little bit later, and then also from the Patriots side. But not knowing any of that information, just everything that we know right now, Taylor, you need to throw it into the universe. What is your prediction for this contest? It's quote-unquote must-win for both. Patriots are 0-2. They want to avoid 0-3. The Jets are 1-1 coming off the Cowboys game, and they went from, we're going to the Super Bowl, we're having the number 1 pick. The Jet fans are just crazy bastards, Taylor. I don't know what to tell you. But what is your prediction for this Week 3 contest, Jets at home against New England?
I think I'll go 20-13. It's just a lot of respect for this defense. I feel like the Patriots, just because they really need to put a good game together, I think they'll be able to score a couple touchdowns, get in field goal range. But it is a good defense, so I'm not going to predict them to put up, 3 touchdowns even necessarily, because I have a lot of respect for that unit. And then in terms of the Jets offense, I feel like an offense, if they script well at the beginning of the game, can drive down on New England and punch one in the end zone. Well-schemed offenses tend to do that a lot of the time, but they do a really good job of finding the adjustments and then just really clamping down. I think we'll maybe see a couple field goals as well from the Jets after that. Maybe just they get the ball past midfield, but I'm also being a little generous because I don't know if Zach Wilson is going to be able to put a lot of good drives together against this defense. Now, they do have injuries at the cornerback position. All 3 of their Joneses, Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, Jack Jones is on injured reserve for the short term. All of those guys are banged up. So you don't know what that rotation is going to look like. But either way, there's a lot of other good players on the defense who I feel like can keep a lid on the passing attack. And hopefully, especially with the Jets having more of a downhill running game, Dalvin Cook known more for outside zone, kind of pin pull type of stuff. They've been running a lot of duo, a lot of inside zone. And I feel like the Patriots, that's more their wheelhouse, especially if they have a whole week to kind of prepare for that sort of thing. Whereas the Dolphins, I think you were really trying to keep them pinned inside and keep them from getting on the edges. So I think it's going to be a tough one for the Jets offense, but also a tough one for a Patriots offense that really, really needs a good performance.
Yeah, I'll be curious because this was a storyline heading into Week 1. Breece Hall had never played against the Bills because of his torn ACL, and then he went for a $127. He had 100 and whatever it was, 5 yards in the first 2 attempts of the game, which put him immediately into the top 5 rushers of Week 1 in his first 2 attempts coming back from torn ACL. Very nice, and he has never played against the New England Patriots. He literally got hurt right the week before last season before playing them, so maybe he could give them a proper introduction in person on Sunday. We can only hope so to have that kind of success after 4 touches. Seems like angry Breece Hall. You won't like him when he's angry, perhaps. I guess we will see ultimately on Sunday. Taylor, you're a freaking superstar, pal. Appreciate you popping up on the show this morning, and the first of many, I'm sure. Thanks for popping on, brother.
I hope so, buddy. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
There he is, Taylor Giles. Read that. You got the discount double check right there. At TKiles39.
That's on my birth certificate.
15,000 followers. Well, God bless America. I'm glad that we were able to have a level of consistency here. That's beautiful. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 7:30 a.m. right here on the channel to continue to preview this Jets-Patriots matchup. God bless, everybody.